I'm joined now by Senator Bernie Sanders. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
So we're in the aftermath of an election that was largely predicated on this idea that Trump would be lowering costs for Americans. This was the high grocery cost election. Now Trump and Elon have come in, taken an axe to the federal government through the DOJ Commission. Is what they're doing lowering costs?
No, of course it's not, but let's back up just for a little bit and see where we are. Because, Brian, we are in literally an unprecedented moment in modern American history. When we look at Mr. Musk, everybody has got to understand this is the wealthiest guy in the world right now, worth over $400 billion. You talk about Trump's getting elected and inaugurated. Musk put over $270 million into Trump's campaign, and guess what? He's now the most important person in government. What does that sound like you? Does that sound like a democracy, a government of the people, by the people, or for the people? Or is it really an oligarchy doing the bidding of the very richest people? All right, that's number one. Number two, what concerns me very much is the move toward authoritarianism in this country. You have Trump circumventing and bypassing Congress, deciding, hey, doesn't matter what Congress did. Congress put money into this project. We're going to do away with it. I don't want to spend that money. It's gone. And that means programs for low-income, working-class people going to be gone. Fortunately, the courts are beginning to put a stop to what he's doing, but that is what he wants to do. Well, you don't have a democracy if you circumvent the legislative body. And then he's going after the courts. You heard J.D. Vance saying, well, the courts don't have a right to stop what the president is doing. No, really? I mean, that's what 100 plus years of American jurisprudence has been about. So you got oligarchy, and then you have this movement toward authoritarianism. Now, to answer your question, what is the goal? What is the end goal here? The end goal of oligarchy is to make the richest people who are already phenomenally rich even richer. So how do you do that? Well, you do that through massive tax breaks. Well, where do you get the money to provide trillions of dollars in tax breaks? You cut programs that working people need. Just today, the House brought forth their budget reconciliation bill, an outline of it, talking about huge tax breaks, the very richest people, while they're cutting Medicaid very significantly, and I suspect other programs as well. So you're asking me, are they going to cut costs for working people? No, they're not. They're going to give tax breaks to the rich, and they're going to make massive cuts in programs that working families desperately need.
Well, to that point, Senator, the Republicans just released their budget plan, and they're seeking a $4 trillion increase in the debt limit, and that would offset $4.5 trillion in tax cuts.
Brian, could that possibly be true? The Republicans who've been telling us for years what a big concern it is that we have a large national debt, they want to increase the national debt by $4 trillion, right? And obviously they want to do that to feed the hungry and to house the homeless and to make sure that everybody has health care, right? Well, maybe not. I mean, it is so ugly and so ridiculous. What they want to do is to increase the national debt. They want to cut Medicaid and other desperately needed programs for working people. To do what? To give massive tax breaks primarily to the wealthy and large corporations. That's what this whole thing is about. Just keep your eyes on the prize. That's what it's about.
Well, you know, a lot of the branding, a lot of the messaging that Republicans have been putting forward is that they're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And so they immediately go after USAID, they immediately go after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And so what does it say that while they're nickel and diming these programs, which, by the way, as far as the CFPB is concerned, that's a program that costs $800 million a year, returned $21 billion to consumers who've been ripped off by predatory banks. You look at USAID, 0.5% of the budget delivers essential programs like clean water, food for refugees, HIV prevention, and helps us with soft power around the world. And so you have these massive benefits for a fraction of the cost, and that's to nickel and dime us out of those programs. But when you're looking to pass tax cuts that would cost us $4.5 trillion, apparently that's totally fine.
I think as a nation, we've got to take a deep breath. I think you framed the question exactly right. Is there waste in every government program? Yeah, there is. Is there waste in every corporation? Yeah, there is. But what they will do is use the issue of waste to kind of destroy entire programs. In terms of USAID, you make very important points. This is a program which is keeping hungry children alive, treating people who have HIV and other preventable diseases. And in terms of quote unquote soft power, what it means is that all over the world, people are saying, thank you, Americans. Thank you for keeping us alive, for feeding our children, for giving us some housing. And that is a positive for us in terms of dealing with global issues all over the world, winning support from people. Going after the Consumer Financial CFP, I always get the initials wrong.
Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB.
All right, this is something that protects consumers from predatory banks. And going after that will just make it easier for banks and large corporations to rip us off. So to answer your question, this is exactly what is going on. When there are programs that help desperate people, we kill them. When there are programs that help large corporations and big banks, those are the programs Republicans will support.
So then what's your message to Trump supporters who voted in this election because they believed, after listening to Trump, that it was a referendum on high prices, on the cost of goods, and yet instead of lifting a finger to do anything to mitigate the cost of high prices, they're instead focused on stripping programs to give them the pretense of cutting waste while at the same time delivering yet another handout to millionaires and billionaires?
What I would say to Trump supporters are two things. Focus not on what Trump says, but what he does. And what he's going to do is cut programs that you and your families need. Do you really think it's appropriate to cut Medicaid substantially? Those are families, your families, may not be able to get the health care that they need. Your mother may not be able to get into the nursing home that she has to get into because Medicaid pays a substantial part of that. We're going to do away with aid to students who want to go to college. Your kids are going to have to go more deeply into debt when we cut back on higher educational programs. So the other thing that I would say is that if you are an honest conservative, you believe in the Constitution of the United States, you do not believe that the richest guy in the history, in modern history, can go around unilaterally cutting programs that were authorized by Congress. So if you're a Trump supporter and you're a working class person, understand that they're going after you. And if you believe in the Constitution and democracy, they're also trying to undermine that.
But Senator, we've seen Trump deploy this strategy before. He did it in 2016, where he came into office on the back of promises that he would make a healthcare plan that was more comprehensive and more affordable, of a jobs boom that never materialized, a manufacturing renaissance that never materialized, of an infrastructure plan that never materialized, and now he's doing the same thing here. And so how do you square that gap, square that circle, basically, where you have him saying one thing, consistently failing to deliver, and yet the message doesn't seem to get through?
It's just not just failure to deliver. He lies all the time, and this is a whole other problem. And Trump has, I'm not going to say the politicians throughout the ages haven't lied. People lie. But he has taken it to an entirely new level. And part of their strategy is just to lie and lie and lie. You go after USAID, you come up with some crazy, outrageous lies to justify what you're doing.
Right, like they're sending $50 million worth of condoms to
completely.
Gaza.
I mean, these guys, and Musk amplifies that on Twitter, etc. I think what we have got to do, which the Democratic Party is at the moment incapable of doing, is organizing at the grassroots level. And I'm going to be going around the country trying to do that, trying to get working people and young people, people of color, just the majority of the people to stand up and say, you know what? When 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, when 85 million people have no health insurance, you do not need to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut programs that working families desperately need. Let's focus on the needs of workers. What do we need to do? We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. You think Trump and the Republicans are going to do that? Ain't going to do that. We need to make it easier for workers to join unions. You think Trump and the Republicans are going to do that? No, they've actually neutered the National Labor Relations Board, which will make it harder for workers to get their union victory certified. Do you think Trump is going to do anything real about lowering the cost of prescription drugs? I doubt it very much. So what we have got to do is focus on the needs of working people. What are they? Healthcare system is broken. Childcare system is broken. Housing crisis of enormous consequence. Climate change is threatening the entire planet. And we can create a whole lot of jobs moving to sustainable energy. Stay focused on what is important to working people. Expose the hypocrisy of Trump. I think that's kind of what we got to do.
There are those who would say that Democrats did focus on those issues in the lead up to this past election cycle, that you had people talking about healthcare, reproductive rights, workers' rights, and that it wasn't enough to overcome the messaging that was coming out of the right. And so how do you contend with that?
I don't quite agree. I don't think people were talking about healthcare very much at all. I mean, what they were saying is, we will defend the Affordable Care Act, right? Against cuts. Republicans will want to cut it. We will defend it. Fine. That's good. Do you think that's enough? The current healthcare system is broken. It is a disaster. We're spending twice as much per person on healthcare any other nation, 85 million uninsured, 60,000 people a year dying because they don't get to a doctor.
Yeah.
We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. It's not enough to defend the Affordable Care Act. We need to do what every other nation on earth does. Guarantee health care to all people as a human right. That's why I strongly support Medicare for all. But what the Democrats have got to do is come up with a strong progressive agenda. Not only do we have 800,000 people who are homeless, you know what else we got? Millions of people spending 40, 50, 60% of their limited incomes on housing. What about a massive housing program, putting people to work, good union jobs, lowering the cost of housing? You got to think big, not small. To Trump's credit, I mean, he lies all the time, etc. He thinks big.
Yeah.
Democrats think incrementally. Maybe in 18 years, we will have accomplished this. Not good enough.
To that exact point, in 2016, you mobilized a massive movement around the country among grassroots Democrats. We've since lost that same vigor in the party, and in fact, we've seen an exodus of folks out of the Democratic Party. And so, looking forward in terms of how to rebuild the brand, given the success that you've had at mobilizing folks on the grassroots level, what advice would you give moving forward to get people excited about the party and not running?
It ain't complicated.
Not running away from the brand anymore.
You got to stand for something. Bottom line, you got to be honest and stand for something. Are you prepared to take on the billionaire class who have unprecedented levels of wealth and power right now and fight for the working class of the country? Democrats, by and large, with some exceptions, are not prepared to do that. And we need people, working class people, young people, to come in and say, you know what? This is the richest country in the history of the world. You got to back up for a minute. Take a deep breath. We talk about throwing more people off of health insurance when we're the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people. Really? Are we a poor country? Are we Haiti? I don't think so. We're the richest country in the history of the world. You tell me, why can't we guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Why can't we have the best educational system in the world, from childcare all the way through graduate school? You think we can't afford to do that? We can. Why aren't we leading the world in combating climate change and creating jobs doing that? Think we can't do that? We can. Bottom line of all of this is you're looking at enormous power and wealth in the hands of a small number of people who could care less about working class people, not on their agenda. For some reason, which frankly I cannot understand, they suffer from the addiction, very serious problem, of greed. You got $50 billion, ain't enough. We're going to cut Social Security so I can get a tax break and maybe get $55 billion. That's the world we are living in. Have Democrats made that clear? No. Do we have to make it clear? Yes. Can we rally the American people, conservatives, progressives, around that approach? I think we can.
Why do you think it's so difficult to convince working class Americans that the billionaire class is not interested in them and that their economic policies aren't actually redounding to their benefit? If you look back to the Reagan days of trickle down, 1980 is really when this plan was implemented, and that is when income inequality exploded in this country. I'll put a graph right here on the screen to overlay over on top of this video to give an indication of what that graph looks like. But since those days, we have seen income inequality explode, and yet they continuously, you have a Republican base that continuously falls for this trap of thinking that so long as we continue to rig the rules in the favor of the millionaire and billionaire class, that it will somehow redound to the benefit of the working class. And all the while, income inequality continues to explode in this country, but we continue to perpetuate this cycle.
All right, but you're being I don't quite agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, but I think you're letting the Democrats get off a little bit easy here. I think what is going on is not that people really believe, Trump has a lot of fervent supporters, I know that, but I don't think there's overwhelming support for the Republican ideology of giving tax breaks to billionaires and cutting Medicaid. But I think what has happened is people looked at the Democratic parties and they say, you've been talking for years, what did you do?
Yeah.
You had Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton developed these terrible trade agreements that led to the shutting down of tens of thousands of factories in America. You had Obama. Well, Obama bailed out the banks, didn't he? Did he really protect working class people to the degree that he should have? No, he did not. And I think, in Biden, you had actually the most progressive president, but not doing all that had to be done by any means. So I think people, it's not so much an attraction to the Republican ideology as saying, Democrats really, you say these things, but you don't do it. So to get back to the bottom line here, you need a Democratic Party that actually stands for the working class, not just rhetorically, but in reality. That means taking on the big money interests and fighting for working families and fighting for an agenda which will improve life for working families.
Practically speaking, though, do you have any concern that by going after these interests, we've seen how when Republicans and Trump embrace them, all these people heap money onto him, heap attention onto him, and so you have, for example, all of these tech billionaires. Once they recognized that he would be better for them, well, they threw their support in.
Right. These were the great liberals of a few years ago, right?
Right. But it stacks the deck against Democrats in such a way that they're able to then rig the rules in Trump's favor because he would be more favorable to him.
Let me look at it a little bit differently here, and that is at the heart of everything is a very, very corrupt campaign finance system.
Yeah.
Okay? And to be honest with you, I don't know how you change things fundamentally when you have people like Musk, not just Musk. Musk himself contributed, $270 million?
Yeah.
One person. I ran for president of the United States. We raised hundreds of millions of dollars. You know what the average contribution was? In one case, it was $27. Millions of people chipping in a little bit. When you are representing big money interests, you don't have to worry about small donors. You got to bring 10 people into the room. You can raise $1 billion, $2 billion. That's it. And for these guys, it's a good investment. So bottom line is on that, you got to get rid of the Citizens United. It has got to be one of the major priorities of any serious political person. Get rid of that. Billionaires should not be allowed to buy elections.
And finally, Senator, if you had one message to Democrats right now, look, the 2026 election cycle started January 21st, 2025. If you have a message to your colleagues in the Senate, the Democratic House Caucus, what would you say moving forward to put us in the best position to be successful?
You've got to understand the strategy of the last many years has failed. All right? Years ago, the white working class deserted the Democrats. More recently, the Latino working class deserted the Democrats. Some black, the strongest supporters are also deserting the Democratic Party. And you got to understand why that is the case. And so what I would say to my Democratic colleagues is you got to break with the past. You got to stop worrying about the campaign contributions. They will come in small donations if you stand tall. You need to have the courage to address the crisis of oligarchy in America. Take these people on. And if you're clear in your message and you're willing to fight for working people will support you.
Senator Sanders, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Brian.